Before we get started, there will be spoilers for the 1000-year Blood War arc of Bleach in the video to come. Well, after ranking the top 10 strongest Bankai in Bleach, it's only fair that we now take a look at the flip side of things too. What are the worst Bankai in the series? Now, note that I said worst and not weakest. That's deliberate, and even then, worst can still be hard to define. In my opinion, there aren't really any truly weak Bankai in Bleach. Bankai is, after all, a Shinigami's trump card, their ultimate move, their greatest display of strength. And therefore, to have a weak Bankai would kind of upend the entire system. It would kind of be the antithesis of what Bankai itself is supposed to be. It doesn't really make sense at a fundamental level. And yet, not all Bankai are created equally. Some are more lacking than others, more flawed than their contemporaries, and some of those flaws run pretty deep. So the Bankai you're about to see on this list aren't weak, but they may be situational. They might appear cumbersome, unwieldy, or even unbefitting. They may still be unrefined, lacking in versatility or depth, or simply have a bad track record. A list of failings that betrays them. As you can see, there aren't as many entries on this list as there were on the most powerful list, and again, that's a testament to how strong and how useful most Bankai actually feel. So, without further ado, let's take a look at the list, and make sure to let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Do you agree, or would you make some changes? As always, we're going to kick things off with a couple of honourable mentions. Bankai that do generally have a lot going for them, but barely scraped onto this list due to a few issues that may or may not be possible to iron out. So, let's take a look. And yes, we are starting the video off with a Bankai that also appeared on my top 10 strongest Bankai list. Shinji Hirako's Sakashima Yokoshima Happo Fusagari. What gives? Well, this is the perfect example of a Bankai that is completely situational. It lives and dies by its circumstance, seriously limiting its versatility and range. Shinji's Bankai can only be used in the most tailored, most perfect, most serendipitous of circumstances, lest he make a serious mistake. Upon activation, Shinji's Bankai envelops him in an ornate golden flower, protecting him from its own ability. Everyone else isn't so lucky. Anyone within the vicinity of the Bankai's pink mist has their perception completely reversed. Allies become enemies, and will viciously kill each other as the Bankai turns friends into foes, reversing their allegiances. While this is undoubtedly completely devastating, allowing Shinji to potentially wipe out huge swaths of enemies at once, it also means he simply cannot use his Bankai at all when his own allies are present, unless he wants them all to kill each other. It's a pretty huge drawback. As a result, Shinji never uses his Bankai during major conflicts like the Fate Karakura Town arc, when his comrades are nearby, and only gets the chance to use it during the 1000-year Blood War arc anime in a newly created scene in which every Shinigami officer around him has already been butchered. The truth is that Shinji's Bankai is also completely worthless in a 1v1 setting, which is how the vast majority of duels in Bleach actually play out. Shinji himself even notes that it feels as though his Zanpakuto has its priorities reversed. His Shikai is better suited to taking on single, strong opponents, while his Bankai should therefore be reserved for dealing with the small fry. So, while Sakashima Yokoshima Happo Fusagari is immensely dangerous, no one is disputing that, it's also extremely situational. If Shinji can use it, then it'll likely cause a lot of damage, but those opportunities simply don't come around often. Up next, we have a Bankai that almost certainly won't be appearing on this list in the future. And that's Rukia's beautiful Haka no Togame. Don't get it wrong, much like Shinji's before her, Rukia's Bankai is incredibly powerful. Once she activates it, Rukia swings her icy sword in a wide arc, sending a tempest of bitter cold towards her enemy. And as we saw in the Thousand Year Blood War arc, Haka no Togame was powerful enough to instantly kill someone as strong as Asnod, with the arc of her sword carving his head in two, resulting in the rest of his body being frozen to its very core. And yet, despite this, despite the Bankai's stunning appearance and glittering display, in its current form, it is both difficult and dangerous to use effectively. Rukia's Bankai feels like a great example of a glass cannon, and I don't just say that because Rukia's gown is translucent, though the idea that she's now effectively made of ice herself does play into the fact. Still unrefined, Rukia's Bankai places her life on a knife's edge. Merely using this Bankai is a huge gamble. Should she move too much, remain within her Bankai state for too long, or try to thaw herself out too quickly afterwards, her own body begins to fracture and split, cracking like glass, a clear sign that a single misstep can mean death itself. Imagine a scenario where Asnod had somehow survived Rukia's Bankai. It seems like, in its current state, Haka no Togame only affords Rukia the one chance. If, hypothetically, the Sternritter had lived, Rukia would have been powerless to stop him from shattering her to pieces. Now, perhaps that argument doesn't hold any water, as in the canon story, Asnod wasn't strong enough to survive her Bankai. But does that mean she's relegated to using it on enemies that are of his power level? Would anyone stronger than him render the Bankai worthless? Rukia's Bankai is one of my absolute favourites, but it has a way to go yet. Perhaps by the time we see her as a captain, 10 years on from the end of the war, she's maybe managed to master it. At that point, the Bankai will absolutely deserve a full re-evaluation, but for now, we simply don't know. Unless you want to take Bleach Brave Souls into account. Alright, now we move on then to the actual list itself, starting with number 7. Yes, there's only really 7 entries to go through. And first up we have one of the more visually impressive Bankai in the series, yet another one that I've always felt to be a little lacking, though admittedly I am conflicted. And that's Mayuri Kurotsuchi's Konjiki Ashisogi Jizo. Mayuri's Bankai completely does away with the paralysing powers of his Shikai, instead conjuring a gigantic abomination that spews poison from its mouth. And this poisonous gas cloud really is the only ability at Konjiki Ashisogi Jizo's disposal. It is also capable of sprouting blades from its chest in case of a battle up close, but it kind of feels to me like were a fight allowed to actually reach that stage, then Mayuri's Bankai has already failed to get the job done in a sense, as we see against Uryu. I struggle, admittedly, with this Bankai a bit though, because the poison gas cloud seems to be impossible to deal with. It seems to be a very powerful ability in its own right, which is why I've actually ranked this Bankai so high on this list. Even though Uryu succeeds in obliterating the Bankai itself, he is still infected by the miasma, and perhaps would have succumbed were it not for Nemu giving him the antidote, and the same goes for Xyloporo, who is instantly affected, and Mayuri can even alter the composition of the poison to make it harder to counteract, seemingly covering all bases. Much like Shinji's Bankai before it, this Bankai's signature ability encompasses a wide area, meaning it affects both friend and foe without discrimination, though in Mayuri's case he simply isn't held back by the moral quandary that presents like Shinji would be. This is exactly what I mean though when I say that none of these Bankai are weak. Mayuri's poison presents an incredible hurdle to overcome, but there's still something about the overall picture of Konjiki Ashisogi Jizo that feels missing to me. This is all capped off by the fact that Mayuri's Bankai is an organic living creature, meaning it is susceptible to being controlled and destroyed, both examples of which we actually see in the series. Regardless, no matter what you think of this Bankai, there's no denying that his new altered Bankai, as of the Thousand Year Blood War arc, is vastly superior, to the point of being broken. Next up, we have the original incarnation of Ichigo's very own Tensa Zangetsu, first revealed in the Soul Society arc. It's amazing how far Ichigo's Bankai comes over the course of the series. While this is undoubtedly its most iconic look, the first version of Tensa Zangetsu also feels a little lacking, and that feeling is only exacerbated with time. While Kubo managed to continue to keep the Bankai of characters like Byakuya feeling dangerous as the arcs progressed and the enemies grew stronger and more ferocious, the same cannot be said of Tensa Zangetsu. Ichigo's first Bankai is initially impressive, draping him in a slick new outfit and handing him a stylish pitch-black katana, along with an incredible speed boost that would, at least originally, be the Bankai's trademark. But from the moment this Bankai is released, it isn't enough. Ichigo would have lost to Byakuya right then and there were it not for the sudden appearance of White, and things only get worse the further into the Arrancar arc we go. Ichigo's Bankai becomes such an afterthought, its upgrade so minimal and intangible that he wears it nearly constantly for over 100 chapters, seriously diluting its overall effect. The issue with the first Tensa Zangetsu then is one of perception. With Ichigo's powers out of alignment during the Arrancar arc, his Hollow Mask effectively takes the place of his Bankai in the hierarchy of power, with his Bankai relegated to essentially his standard fit. Now, I have moved this Bankai up a few places on the list from last time, as I feel the boosts it gives Ichigo are at least initially significant. But I still think it deserves to be here nonetheless, as it's quickly outclassed. It's noticeable too that after Deicide, after Ichigo's powers are returned to him in The Lost Agent, that his Bankai, the second version of Tensa Zangetsu, the one mixed with his Fullbring, feels noticeably both more powerful and impactful. In fifth place, we have another spectacle of a Bankai, but one that's long been the subject of ridicule among the community. Sajin Komamura's original Kokujo Tengen Myo. Komamura's Bankai conjures an enormous, striking warrior garbed in a suit of ornate armor and wielding a titanic version of Tenken itself. This warrior is linked to Komamura even more directly than most Zanpakuto, and follows all of the captain's movements exactly. If Komamura should swing his sword, then so too will Kokujo Tengen Myo. Again, this Bankai isn't weak, far from it. Kokujo Tengen Myo, in fact, is one of the most physically destructive Bankai in the series, capable of brutal, effortless one-shot kills and mangling Tosen's arm merely by clipping him with a deceptively quick strike. And yet this Bankai is severely lacking in versatility. It's a huge, lumbering target, and to make matters worse, damage inflicted upon the armoured warrior is reflected onto Komamura himself. So, by using his Bankai, Komamura is uniquely putting himself in harm's way. It's clear then that when he releases Kokujo Tengen Myo, Komamura does so expecting to win, and to win quickly. The Bankai isn't really suited for a long, protracted fight, as Tosen points out. The Bankai itself as well has no special abilities. There is nothing to it outside of raw power. That being said, while this Bankai used to have a really bad reputation, I think it received a sizable buff in the Thousand Year Blood War arc from an unexpected source. You see, one of the biggest, most shocking reveals of the Thousand Year Blood War arc was that a damaged or destroyed Bankai can never return to the way it was, save for Komamura's. Because of that same link that causes Komamura himself to be injured when his Bankai is attacked, Kokujo Tengen Myo is able to restore itself completely after taking heavy damage and even being completely wrecked. A huge advantage in a world of surprisingly fragile Bankai. It's for that reason that Kokujo Tengen Myo isn't lower down on this list. In fourth place on the list, we have Soifon's oft-maligned Bankai, Jakuho Raikoben. Now, I enjoy this Bankai conceptually. What's not to like about an enormous gold and black missile launcher? I enjoy as well the layers on show here. That Soifon has a Bankai she hates that feels like, on the surface, that it doesn't fit her at all, and yet in reality represents her more temperamental, unpredictable, and frankly explosive side. Her Shikai Suzumebachi embodies her more calculated self, the side that effortlessly carries out lightning-fast assassinations. But her Bankai is a totally different beast, and one that speaks volumes to Soifon's character all the same. The idea behind Jakuho Raikoben then is clear. Suzumebachi causes death in 2 hits, while her Bankai should, theoretically, be able to kill enemies with a single missile blast. Except it doesn't. That's where this Bankai falls down for me. Reliability. The proof simply isn't in the pudding where this Bankai is concerned. In the Fate Karakura Town arc, Soifon is shown having to undergo a serious amount of setup just to fire Jakuho Raikoben in the first place, only for it to ultimately fail her both times, the first of which is admittedly not really her fault. The Bankai consumes an enormous amount of her Reryoku, and yet even scoring a direct, virtually point-blank hit on Baragon isn't enough to kill the Espada. So what use is this thing? Now admittedly, it does blow a huge hole in the Skeleton King's head, so I'm not entirely sure how he's coming back from that, but he does, somehow, and continues fighting as though nothing has really happened. I've said it before, but I wonder if it's possible for Baragon to even return to his base form again after taking that hit. Sadly, we'll never know. Then, in the Thousand Year Blood War arc, Soifon is shown to have grown and developed her Bankai. She no longer needs a Jinjotan sash, and she can fire a missile on the brink of death now, implying Jakuho Raikoben's Reryoku usage isn't quite so draining anymore. And yet, once again, even with BG9 unable to move, and the missiles scoring another direct hit, the Sternritter survives the blast. Jakuho Raikoben is apparently great at punching holes in heads, but terrible at following through. Maybe Soifon simply gets unlucky with her choice of opponents, but either way, the Bankai has done little to convince me of its true usefulness. In third place, taking the dubious honour of the bronze medal, we have Kensei Muguruma's Tekken Tachikaze. In my opinion, the overall worst Bankai from the current lineup of captains. Turning Kensei's combat knife into a pair of knuckle blades connected by an iron wrapping that loops over the captain's shoulders, Tekken Tachikaze has the ability to condense Kensei's explosive punches into those fist-mounted blades. And for as long as Kensei's fist connects with his opponent, they'll be pummeled by those explosions endlessly. While Kensei has the ability to transform how the blades look, as far as we know, this is really all Tekken Tachikaze can do. It's a close-range Bankai then, and one with little versatility under its belt. It's difficult to say for sure just how powerful and damaging Tekken Tachikaze's soul ability really is, considering we've only seen it used against Masked Masculine in the source material, a character who, let's face it, kind of broke the power systems of Bleach, but once Mask overcomes the Bankai's initial assault, he's quick to dismantle it with ease. Kensei also uses his Bankai against Wonder Weiss in the source material, but is defeated off-screen. And in the Thousand Year Blood War arc anime, a zombified Kensei gets the chance to repeatedly batter Pepe with his Bankai too, where he didn't in the original chapter, but that only served to continue to make Tekken Tachikaze look unimpressive after Pepe was left, for all intents and purposes, uninjured by the assault, save for a few surface cuts and bruises. I have no doubt that the sheer force behind Kensei's Bankai is a force to be reckoned with, but in comparison to virtually every other Bankai in the series, this just feels to me very undercooked. Perhaps Kensei will be given the opportunity to display more of what Tekken Tachikaze can do in the future, but if this really is it, then unfortunately this Bankai just isn't that impressive. In second place, we have a Bankai that is no longer with us, and for good reason too. Renji Ibarai's false Bankai Hihio Zabimaru may look amazing, and I really do think this Bankai has a wonderful, elaborate design, but it's ultimately a cumbersome, unwieldy mess of a weapon that possesses little to no advantages in battle. Renji's enormous skeletal bone whip looks fearsome, but Hihio Zabimaru is a truly clunky Bankai. In its debut battle, Byakuya succeeds in tricking Renji into attacking his own Bankai, quickly identifying and exploiting the major issues with a weapon of this scale. Sure, it was Renji's first real attempt at using the Bankai, but watching as the serpent's head collides with its own body in a tangled display is a brutal reminder of the skill required to effectively wield such a weapon. And that itself comes with the question of whether or not it's really worth it. Hihio Zabimaru is simply never that impressive. Now, to be fair to the Bankai, it does pack a punch, and its massive jaws are capable of real force, while Hikot's Taiho, Hihio Zabimaru's energy beam blast, is capable of annihilating a Fraction, quickly turning Ilfort to dust. With his Bankai, Renji can cover a vast distance at once, and even displays some strategy and deftness when using it, splitting the segments of the Bankai apart at times to get the drop on his opponent in a clever usage of its more extraneous abilities. And yet, Hihio Zabimaru has always felt oddly fragile to me, a serious counterpoint to everything it can do, admittedly a sentiment true of a lot of Bankai, to be fair. At the end of the day, the fact of the matter is that this isn't Renji's real Bankai, and you can feel it. From a power standpoint, at least. I still think Hihio Zabimaru looks vastly better than Sora Zabimaru, but that's purely a subjective opinion about the Bankai's aesthetic. Outside of that, Sora Zabimaru is an objective improvement in every single way, taking Renji's Bankai from the second worst Bankai to the honourable mentions of my top 10 strongest Bankai list. But there can be only one worst Bankai overall, and I imagine many of you saw this coming a mile away. This list has changed a fair bit since the last time I made it, back in 2022, and yet my silver and gold winners have remained the same. Madarame Ikaku's Ryumon Hozakimaru is the worst Bankai in Bleach, and it doesn't feel particularly close either. It's a shame too, as Ryumon Hozakimaru has an incredible design, coupled with one of the best reveals of any Bankai in the series, amplified even more by an absolutely electrifying performance in the anime. Ikaku's Bankai feels like the quintessential Bankai reveal to me, which is why the actual Bankai itself is such a letdown in almost every other way. Upon activation, Ryumon Hozakimaru takes on the form of two gigantic black blades, decorated with flaming red tassels, Ikaku holding one in each hand. A third arcing blade floats above the Shinigami, connected to the oversized pommels of the others by a massive chain that dangles behind him. The third blade is adorned with the depiction of a dragon that slowly begins to fill with a crimson light as the battle drags on. For you see, Ikkaku's Bankai is a slow starter. In an effort to have the fight last as long as possible, something very much born from Ikkaku's own personality, Ryumon Hozakimaru slumbers at the start of a fight, only waking gradually over time. Ikkaku can spin his blades to hasten the awakening, but outside of that, the Bankai has no special abilities whatsoever. So it takes a while to get going, immediately starting Ikkaku off with a handicap, and it has no special powers to complement it. Is there anything this Bankai can actually do? Not really. And while that's admittedly again true to Ikkaku's style, his preferred way of doing battle, strangely, Ryumon Hozakimaru's makeup doesn't really adhere to that same mantra, that same design, in a way that feels like a fatal flaw. Ryumon Hozakimaru is surprisingly brittle, with Ikkaku forcing so much power into it that the edges of his blades crack with ease during the fight. By the end of his battle with Edrad, Ikkaku's Bankai has been completely destroyed. He's won the duel, but it's utterly cost him Ryumon Hozakimaru, which was pushed to the max and way beyond. Originally, back in the Irankar arc, this wasn't an issue, but after learning the truth behind Bankai in the Thousand Year Blood War arc, well, it kind of feels like no one told Ikkaku that Bankai won't return to their original state. Ryumon Hozakimaru then has been permanently scarred, crippled even. And that's what blows my mind the most about Ryumon Hozakimaru and its depiction. It's unbelievable to me that a Bankai could be used like this in such a careless manner. Ikkaku loves a good fight, but he's not stupid either. However, as a result of this battle, he has forever wounded his Bankai in a way that simply cannot be reversed, all to defeat an admittedly powerful Fraction, but a Fraction all the same. Ryumon Hozakimaru wasn't that strong to begin with, but now it's forever a shadow of its former self, even after Akon tried to repair it. And this is where things do get a little weird to me, in a sense that Ryumon Hozakimaru feels like it was either forgotten about or simply ignored when it came to the Thousand Year Blood War arc. Because I don't believe that Kubo always intended for Bankai to remain broken back here in the Irankar arc, and therefore Ikkaku going all out in a way that devastated his weapon wasn't intended to result in a consequence that would last forever. But now that's the case, Ikkaku's Ryumon Hozakimaru is far and away the biggest casualty of that twist reveal, to the point where it's likely almost unusable now. It's no wonder he never activates it in the Thousand Year Blood War arc. This Bankai then feels completely at odds with that reveal, with that plot twist. Ryumon Hozakimaru reflects Ikkaku in many ways. It's a brute force Bankai designed to be used in a clash of blades, much like how Ikkaku uses it against Edrad. But if the Bankai is constantly teetering on oblivion, if one bad strike or a glancing blow is enough to permanently damage it, a Bankai that works as this one does, then I struggle to really see the point in it, or understand fundamentally how a fighter like Ikkaku was really meant to use it at all. Alright guys, but that's it for the video. Those are my 7 overall worst Bankai in the series. They are the most flawed, the most situational, the most unrefined. There's a lot of ways of defining it, but ultimately that is my list with a couple of honourable mentions to cap it off. As always, let me know your lists down in the comments below. Let me know your rankings. How do you feel about mine? Do you agree with it? Or is there anything you change? I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Perhaps I missed one, like how I quite clearly missed Kamishini no Yari off of my top 10 strongest Bankai list. Were I given the chance to redo it, which, give it a couple of years, maybe we will, it will almost certainly be on there. But that's it from me, guys. As always, I really hope you enjoyed the video and maybe got something out of it as well. And as always, I want to end by saying a massive thank you and giving a huge shout out to my wonderful supporters over on Patreon, without whom I simply couldn't do this. I really do appreciate all of your support. If you love what I do here on YouTube and you also want to support the channel, thank you. You can do that by going to my Patreon and becoming a Patreon supporter for as little as $1 a month, which will get you your name in the credits of every single video just like this. By supporting me at $2 or higher, you can also receive every single video I release absolutely free of baked-in YouTube ads. Alright everyone, well that's it from me. As always, I really hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.